So there's another one that we want to bring up, and that's the former police chief of New York City, Bernard Kerik. Mr. Kerik was the chief of police of New York City at 9/11, protege of Rudy Giuliani, and so he got convicted. I think sometime around 2000.
Yeah, he was indicted in November of 2007. He actually pleaded guilty right in 2009 to 8 felony tax counts and false statements charges, and was sentenced to 48 months in federal prison and 3 years of supervised release.
Now, this guy was, he had been nominated to be Secretary of Homeland Security, and the nomination was withdrawn. So anyhow,
one of the first heads of Department of Homeland Security, too. And this is post-Patriot Act era, a position arguably more powerful than any ministerial position, even to combat maybe even the Secretary of State position right now.
So these charges were brought against him, Edward, and, back at the time, it just looked like, just old-style political corruption in New York City, maybe some contracts were, fudged, it's just basic run-of-the-mill political corruption. Well, looking back now, we see something. Because why are we looking back? Because Donald Trump pardoned him. So what's there that we're now seeing? Here's what it is. About 2 weeks before the September 11 attacks, the police chief, Mr. Kerik, took a trip to Israel. And who did he meet in Israel?
He met Israeli billionaire Eitan Wertheimer. I have a picture of him, number 5. He's the son, actually, of another billionaire. The family business itself is in industry. He's an investor, philanthropist. His father is Steph. Steph is on the right. Eitan is on the left. Eitan is the one that met with the New York police commissioner 2 weeks before 9/11.
And so this is Mr. Wertheimer. Eitan Wertheimer, a billionaire, so it's his father on the right?
Yes, I included his father because the father is really where the family's $1 billion came from. They're arguably the richest family in Israel, according to a list compiled in 2013. The father actually was part of Haganah. He worked.
So he was a terrorist.
He was a terrorist.
So he killed Palestinians
and Brits
in the pre 1948 terrorist attacks when they had the Jewish terrorists in Palestine killing Arabs.
Yes.
So he was one of the original Jewish terrorists.
That's correct. And then he left school to go do this activity. In '69, this man became pivotal in Israel's efforts to overcome the French weapons embargo, which came after the Six-Day War. So note that French weapons embargo included the planes used to attack the USS Liberty. So it was after the supply of those planes and parts were cut off. He became the man. He founded Iskar Blades technology, which helped produce the parts for the industries of war in Israel.
Okay, so we'll go back to August 2001, just weeks before the September 11 attacks, and the New York City Police Department Chief of Police, Mr. Kerik, took a trip to Israel, and he met Mr. Wertheimer, the billionaire. Isn't that amazing? You take a vacation, you go to Israel, you just have a personal meeting with a billionaire. That happens to everybody that goes to Israel, right? Well, how did that happen? Well, because a Brooklyn man, Mr. Cohen, Shimon Cohen, who is a marble and stone merchant in Brooklyn, he arranged the meeting with Mr. Kerik and Mr. Wertheimer in Israel 2 weeks before September 11 attacks. Why is this important? Because Mr. Kerik's the chief of police of New York City.
He was only appointed in August. Think about this. His maybe first month really on the job.
Immediately he's taken to Israel.
Yeah, it's just like our governor here in Florida, Ron DeSantis, going
he becomes chief of police in August 2001. He's immediately introduced to a billionaire in Israel. And then 2 weeks after the vacation, we have 9/11. Well, something came Mr. Kerik's way. Guess what it was? An interest-free loan from Mr. Wertheimer. A loan that had no repayment terms, no interest. A loan that Mr. Kerik, the police chief, didn't make any payments on it until he got caught with the loan, with the money, because he never disclosed it to government officials that he had this money from Mr. Wertheimer. But Mr. Wertheimer didn't directly give it to him. He laundered the money through Mr. Cohen to conceal the origin of the money. Now, this is the man that Mr. Trump pardoned this week. Are you getting my drift? Are you starting to put together the connections? Could this be why I'm not on YouTube? Because we connect dots, we ask questions, we dare to question the official narrative? Is this why YouTube shut us down? Well, of course it is. It had nothing to do with the interview with Steve Bannon.
No.
It's because we're a pain in their butt. That's why.
Satan's synagogue of censorship is very angry about the things we talk about this program, specifically this story of the many we bring up. Mr. Kerik, his meeting with this billionaire is of specific interest because the billionaire family, the Wertheimers, they actually personally came up with their own version of the Marshall Plan for the Middle East. This was so much. It wasn't an idea he just came up out of nowhere. He believed this so much, he actually briefed it to Congress in 2002. It was going to be a plan to revitalize the Middle East and bring about jobs for Palestinians in the service industry. It's going to create industrial parks in Israel. This really, reading about this today, Rick, it really made me think about the proposed peace plan, which we've now seen as essentially a plan of pieces, a no-state deal. But the Wertheimers, the one who gave the $250,000 check, mind you, through the wife of Mr. Kerik, the New York City police commissioner, it was given to his wife. That's how they kept it secret, a check with no parameters. And this, again, was given to him while he was serving as the Interior Minister of Iraq, a U.S. official, mind you, being appointed by George W. Bush to be the interim Interior Minister of Iraq.
And he got that job because at the time, this is around 2003, he was an employee of Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, boy.
Who had a consulting company. And so he was on leave from Giuliani Partners, and then he got the Bush administration made him an advisor to the Interior Ministry for the Coalition Provisional Authority. So
this is the man that President Trump decided to pardon. Of all the people, there's not a pardon for Paul Manafort, not a pardon for Roger Stone, not a pardon for General Flynn, but we have a pardon for Mr. Kerik. And want to know here, Mr. Kerik was the famous individual who gave us the story about the Saudi passport that mysteriously didn't burn up in the plane crash. We have the actual picture of the passport again. We can show it's number 4. This was September 16th, 5 days after the worst terrorist attack in U.S. history. Mr. Kerik announced the discovery of one of the alleged hijackers' passports. He found it on the street.
Just walking down the street of New York and found an unburned, unsinged passport.
And we still don't know who the individual was that found it. That individual was never named. They just saw him to find this passport. You'd think the name of this person would be very important. He was the great treasure hunter to find the passport.
I think his name was Murray Massad.
Murray Massad. That sounds like an Irish name.
Yes. Hey, back into this article, and we're reading from New York Times, November 24, 2007. Kerik loan activity is brought to light after indictment. Okay, this is where we're getting this information. This is 2007 from the New York Times. Did you notice this, Edward? It said, this is towards the end of the article, the real estate developer Stephen C. Witkoff is listed in the indictment as John Doe number 5, and that he paid more than $236,000 in rent for Mr. Kerik from 2001 to 2003. There's another $236,000 that flowed while he is, I guess, was still police chief of New York City, 2001 to 2003. So this man, Stephen Witkoff, was in the indictment, was identified as John Doe number 5. He's paying over $250,000 rent to Mr. Carrick during those 2 years.
And the prosecutors in the case, which was finally brought before them, they believe this was a bribe. But again, we're not allowed to talk about this, and they don't even name him in the prosecution. They give him the John Doe. I think it's important to note that Mr. Carrick's tenure as the police chief was awful short. It was only until December of 2001. So he came in August, took a trip to Israel. We saw the worst terrorist attack in U.S. history, and then he left along with Giuliani in 2001, the end of 2001. Almost as if it was a great job done, and then he went on to receive this wonderful $250,000 loan.
So the Zionists had somebody in the police chief's office on September 11 who was in their pocket.
What would we be saying if this man visited Iran 2 weeks before the terrorist attack? What would we be saying if he visited Russia or China? We would say that's pretty relevant, right?
Well, if he had been to Iraq, we would have bombed Iraq. We would have gone in and killed Saddam Hussein. Oh, we did.
Oh, yes.
We did bomb Iraq, and we did kill Saddam Hussein, and he didn't have anything to do with it. But the people who did have something to do with it didn't get bombed. In fact, they're still rocking and rolling, and nobody dares to question them in the United States of America.
Well, the synagogue of censorship will say we're obsessed with this. But
we're trying to tell you. I'm trying to get canceled. I'm trying to get my YouTube channel canceled here today.
Oh, wait. It's already gone. And we're still here.
Yes, we are.
Look at this. This is a story because President Trump pardoned this man.
Yes.
Okay, that's why we're talking about
this.
And
who supervised the pardons? Newspapers are saying, without a doubt, the pardons were engineered by Jared Kushner.
The same man who engineered the peace deal accord, the same man who reportedly engineered the transfer of spy technology to Saudi Arabia on behalf of
Jared
Israel.
Kushner is an Israeli agent inside the Trump White House. Why doesn't somebody investigate it? I know why, but nobody wants to talk about it, do they? Because they're all afraid. Who are they afraid of?
For fear of the...
Yeah. For fear of who? The Bible tells us who. It's the same people today. They have their claws in this country, and they're manipulating even the President of the United States. They've got him in their hip pocket. And they've got their little agent, Jared Kushner, inside the Oval Office, getting things done. They got Milliken sprung. They got Carrick sprung. They're getting all their people. Who was one of the first? I think it was the first pardon that Donald Trump gave, and it was to a Chabad meat packer, ran a meat packing company, member of Chabad Lubavitch. And that was the very first presidential pardon under Donald Trump.
That's correct, Rick. And again, it wasn't the activities of the president weren't to prosecute his political adversaries. And it's not really adversaries, the criminals that made President Trump's campaign possible. Hillary Clinton, we later learned about James Comey, Brennan, Barack Obama. None of these individuals were prosecuted, but a bunch of people have been pardoned, and that's at the hand of Jared Kushner, an agent of Israel.